Okay, imagine this. It's the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the night of July 2nd, 1937,
Mm-hmm.
and it is pitch black. I
Mm.
mean, no city lights, no horizon line, just this endless void where the water meets the sky. And it's completely silent.
And that silence is heavy, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
just a lack of noise. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
like a presence.
Exactly. And the source we're digging into today, Amelia Earhart and the Sky Without Limits, it starts right there, in that silence. It describes the ocean not as water, but as a vault that just refused to answer the question the whole world was asking. Her
Mhm.
radio voice just fades into static and then nothing. Just a line on a map that stops, in midair.
That image of the line ending in midair is so potent. It's a perfect metaphor for something unfinished.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have to start this deep dive because, usually when people talk about Amelia Earhart, they want to play detective. They want coordinates,
You're right.
wreckage.
Yeah.
They want to solve the cold case.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone wants that satisfaction,
Yeah.
Here's the plane, here's what happened.
Case closed. But our mission today is a little different. The source argues that if we only focus on the crash, we're missing the entire point of her life.
We're not here to find the aluminum.
We're here to figure out why, nearly a century later, people still look up when they hear a plane hum overhead and think of her.
It's so true. I catch myself doing it. It's almost a reflex. And according to this text, it's not because she vanished. It's because of everything she did before that.
Before the static.
Yes. Because she dared to go where the world had, well, very explicitly told women they didn't belong.
It's a powerful distinction. The source argues her disappearance is really only half the story. The other half, the part that just refuses to stay buried under all the facts and reports, is what the author calls folklore rooted in longing.
Folklore rooted in longing. I mean, what a phrase. We're going to unpack exactly what that means, but first we have to go back.
Way back.
Way back. Before the leather jacket, before the parades, to Amelia the kid in Kansas.
And this is where that fitting the mold idea just gets thrown out the window immediately.
Oh, completely. You see those famous photos of her looking so poised and cool. But the text describes her childhood, and she was basically a tornado in a dress.
Not the proper young lady at the time.
Not at all. She was climbing trees, hunting rats with a rifle. She built her own roller coaster off a shed.
So she was testing boundaries from the very beginning.
She was. The source says she was laughing at rules that felt too small.
And that phrase, too small, is so interesting to me. It implies she already had this sense of her own capacity.
Yeah.
The world was offering her this tiny little box, and she was already trying to, break out of it.
And here's the part that really surprised me. You'd think, okay, future aviation pioneer, she must have been obsessed with planes from day one.
You'd assume so.
Ah.
The classic love at first sight story.
Nope, not at all. The source mentions her first encounter with an airplane was at a state fair. She saw this biplane on the ground, and she was totally unimpressed.
Really?
Yeah. She described it as just a bundle of wires and cloth.
That's fascinating. It speaks to her pragmatism. We tend to romanticize her as this big dreamer, but she was very mechanical. She looked at it on the ground and saw it for what it was.
A rusty bicycle with wings?
It was ugly. It didn't look like magic. It looked like, well, a death trap.
Exactly. It wasn't until years later, when she actually went up in one, that the switch flipped. And the way the text describes this moment is, it's incredible. She goes up about 200 feet, and it says it wasn't just the view. It was that the ground fell away, and with it went the limits everyone else had set for her.
Wow. That's a profound psychological insight. I mean, think about that. For a woman back then, the ground represented society. It's where you wear a corset, where you can't vote, where you're supposed to be quiet. Gravity wasn't just physical.
It was social.
Precisely. So when she flew, she wasn't just lifting her body. The source puts it perfectly. She was lifting the version of herself she wanted to be.
Up there, the rules of 1920 society they didn't apply.
The air doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It only cares about lift and drag.
I got chills reading that. It frames flying not as a hobby, but as like an act of self-liberation. But let's ground this for a second, because I think we really glamorize the golden age of aviation.
Oh, absolutely. We see it through sepia-toned glasses.
But the source makes it very clear. Aviation back then was raw and dangerous. This wasn't a smooth ride with a bag of peanuts.
Far from it. You were basically flying inside a machine made of wood and fabric.
The planes rattled, engines failed all the time. The noise.
Deafening. And the vibration. It would rattle your teeth loose.
And let's talk about the fashion. We see that iconic leather jacket and think, wow, style icon.
Right, Vogue magazine stuff.
But the text points out pilots didn't wear leather for the aesthetic
No, they wore it for survival.
because it was freezing up there.
You were sitting in an open-air wind tunnel at 10,000 feet. That leather jacket was the only thing standing between you and hypothermia. It just reminds you this was intensely physical work.
And on top of all the physical danger, it was socially hostile. The text calls aviation a man's world, guarded by raised eyebrows and closed doors.
I can just picture that skepticism,
It wasn't just that men thought women couldn't fly, it was that they thought they shouldn't.
which creates this very specific kind of pressure. When you're the first or the only, you're not just flying a plane.
You're representing your entire gender.
Exactly.
Her.
If a male pilot crashed, it was a mechanical failure. If Amelia crashed, well, that was proof that women belong in the kitchen.
That is such a heavy burden to carry into a cockpit. But she walked through those doors anyway, and her motivation, which the source highlights, is really cool. She wasn't just a thrill seeker. It says she believed the sky should be shared.
That's a very democratic view of the atmosphere.
It is, and the takeaway is that every mile she flew chipped away at the idea that courage had a gender.
And that's the key. She was dismantling a stereotype, mile by mile.
Hmm.
But what I find most compelling in this source is how it talks about her heroism. Because, heroes are usually presented as fearless,
Yeah.
unshakable.
Right. The superhero archetype. No nerves.
But Amelia's public image was different. She broke records, she crossed oceans, but she never pretended it was effortless.
Which is so refreshing.
She talked openly about fear. She talked about the intense preparation required to manage that fear.
And I think that's why people connected with her so much. The source makes this great point about bravery. It says bravery isn't the absence of doubt. It's the choice to move forward anyway.
Exactly. If you aren't afraid, you aren't being brave, you're just oblivious. Bravery requires fear. It requires understanding you might die and choosing to act.
And by being honest about it, she made her achievements feel accessible. She wasn't some god, she was human. And if a human could do it, then maybe.
Yeah, and maybe you could do it.
She made the impossible feel possible. Which brings us, inevitably, to the flight. The big one.
Around the World Trip, 1937.
And the source describes this in a way that feels really heavy. It emphasizes this wasn't some dramatic stunt. This was methodical, planned, serious work.
That's such an important correction to the narrative. Sometimes history treats it like this whimsical adventure gone wrong.
Yeah.
But she was a professional. She was flying a Lockheed Electra, a flying laboratory.
Tracing the widest path the planet could offer right at the equator. She'd already flown 22,000 miles. She was almost done.
And she was tired. The plane was worn. And they were staring down the longest, hardest stretch, the Pacific.
And this is where the source drops a line that just hits you in the gut.
Yeah.
The sky doesn't care about plans.
No, it doesn't. Nature is indifferent. It doesn't care that you're famous or that you're a symbol.
So, somewhere near this tiny little island, Howland Ryland Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan, they just vanish.
And the world is left waiting for answers that never arrive. And this is where the aftermath gets really interesting.
The search.
But it wasn't just a search, was it? The text frames it as a collective refusal to let her story end without meaning.
That's a powerful idea. We weren't just looking for a plane, we were looking for closure. We couldn't accept that someone so vital could just cease to exist.
It felt like a glitch in the universe.
And because we couldn't find facts, we filled the silence with theories. The source says they bloomed like constellations.
Bloomed like constellations. I love that. We were creating patterns in the dark to try and make sense of the chaos.
Let's run through the big three theories in the text. First, the most tragic one, the crash and sink.
Claimed by depth and darkness. That's the cold final end. The plane runs out of fuel, hits the water, sinks. It's the most likely scenario, but it's the least satisfying.
Then there's the one that gives people hope, but also horror, the Gardner Island theory.
Right.
That she landed on a remote reef, survived for days, maybe weeks, calling for help that never came.
That one is just haunting because it implies she was waiting. It turns the silence into a missed connection. It turns her into a castaway, fighting to the very end.
And then the third one, which I hadn't heard phrased this way, the ghost story.
Yes, the whispers in Pacific communities.
Yeah.
Stories of a foreign woman pilot who appears at the edge of memory.
Almost like she became a spirit of the ocean.
It just shows how deeply she permeated the global consciousness. But the source emphasizes that while none of these versions could be proven, all of them endured.
And that endurance is what turned her into folklore. But the text is very specific here. It's not folklore with magic spells.
No.
It's folklore rooted in longing.
And that is the core to this deep dive. Why does she still matter today? Because she symbolizes unfinished journeys. She represents everyone who steps beyond what they know and pays a price for it.
There's this visual the source describes of artists painting her frozen in mid-flight, forever airborne, never falling.
That's the paradox of disappearing, isn't it? Because she never landed, she never got old, she never failed. In our collective imagination, she is always 39, always in the cockpit, always pushing forward.
It definitely changed her legacy. If she'd come home, she would be a hero, but a historical one, a grounded one.
Exactly. Instead, she became a parable. The text talks about how she's used in stories today. Parents telling the story as a quiet challenge to their daughters. Teachers using her name when lessons turn to courage.
And I think the reason it really lingers, and the source nails this, is that it mirrors a very human moment. That feeling of pushing past safety to chase a dream that's just out of reach.
Yes. Most of us, when we hit that point of fear, when the fuel gauge drops low, we land. Or we turn back. It's the rational thing to do.
But she kept going.
She kept going until the map ran out. And there is something terrifying and also incredibly seductive about that level of commitment.
So as we wrap this up, the source tries to reframe this entire mystery.
It shifts the focus. It argues the real question is, where did she go?
The question is, what did she leave behind?
And what she left behind wasn't just a mystery. She left cracks in a ceiling that once felt solid.
That's the legacy. She proved that ceiling, whether it's gender or fear or gravity, was breakable. Even though she didn't finish, the cracks were there. The light was coming through.
And she left proof that curiosity can be stronger than fear.
Which is a lesson we need in every generation. Curiosity is a form of courage. To want to know what's over that horizon so badly that you risked everything, that's the explorer's spirit.
So the source ends with this really provocative thought. It says that actually solving the mystery finding the plane would mean grounding her.
And she never belonged on the ground for long. The text says when people say she vanished, it's only half true. Her plane disappeared, sure, but her story...
Her story keeps flying. It's restless. It's unresolved.
And because it's unresolved, it demands something from us. It asks a question. And I want to leave you with this question today, straight from the source.
How far would you go if you believed the sky was yours too?
That's the question. Not just for pilots, but for anyone staring at a map that seems to have an edge.
It's an invitation to keep going, to trust that that bundle of wires and cloth might actually fly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the sky without limits.
Keep looking up.